Thanks, Jeff. So we know that none of that happens in a vacuum, right? There's always competing initiatives. So I'm curious how you solve the tug of war that exists inside the company and the marketplace, including, the return to office question. How do you control hiring by location? And how do you always solve for and keep DEI as a front of mind initiative?
Yeah, this is honestly, it's become a bigger and bigger piece, I think, for a couple, well, there's actually a few reasons, but as we've gone out of COVID and COVID was this huge push to work from home, and then companies trying to decide what does that mean post COVID. ServiceNow, I'm really grateful for ServiceNow. We do have a policy. It's I think in between some of the extreme of work from in the office 5 days a week or work from home 5 days a week. We're basically somewhere in the middle, but there's still that has an impact between return to office, hiring location, D&I, et cetera. And honestly, I think it's just going to get bigger and bigger for all of us as we look at hiring. My biggest advice when it comes to this topic from a TA perspective, it results around a couple of things. One, again, this is why we have to be at the table from the start. Whenever you're talking about headcount, resource planning, workforce planning, whatever word you want to call it, is the sooner TA's at the table, the more that we can help. And what I mean by helping, again, part of our team within our TA org, and it's under Tiffany Hyman, who's our global sourcing and market intel leader. Her team does an amazing job of providing market intel data to our TA side and to the business. I will constantly tell the tech side, we cannot make hiring decisions or future headcount decisions without involving our TA market intelligence team. And that's so important to look at, whether it's just by overall talent in a given location, looking at the D&I data for locations. We should not be making any hiring decisions, whether it's small or large, until we're having that type of analysis, looking at that external data. Otherwise, we're setting ourselves up for failure. I always go back years ago. I won't say the company, but it was the company I worked at before Amazon, where they decided to open up a location in Costa Rica. And all of a sudden, they committed to hiring like 200 roles for engineering. Well,
Wow.
Costa Rica is really a support ops function. We could not fill these roles. But as an example, TA wasn't involved at the start. And it really devastated our ability to not only fulfill the hiring, but for the business to meet their projects. So that's the first advice I would give. Secondly, when it comes to this is let's be very clear up front. When it comes to things like if there's an org strategy, a return to office, TA doesn't own this. And we got to be very vocal from the start. We will help, we will provide insights. We do not own this. And I've had cases where like we may have targets or goals for a certain amount of hiring in by country or by location. One of the analogies I use for TA is we are like an order fulfillment service. We take the orders. Now we give advice, we give guidance, we have SLAs behind those orders, but the actual order, i.e., where a rec is located in this example, starts with the business. And I mention that because if the business does have goals by location, org size, org shape, that is not necessarily, they have a tendency to blame TA if they don't hit those targets.
Right.
And it's important to me, again, by being vocal from the start, that we'll help you with external data, we'll help you to make decisions, but please understand the actual decision on where you hire or who you hire is up to the business.
Wow. Well said, Jeff. And I think this is an interesting reinforcement of the concept that, as a TA leader, you need to have a seat at the table to be able to, participate in your own, workload and be able to have a voice about the constraints or the challenges that might occur if there's a little researched or an impulsive decision to open an office here, Costa Rica there. And I think it begs the question, what specific challenges have you faced at ServiceNow related to the headcount management piece?
It's a great question, and it's a lot. What I'm happy to say is a lot of these challenges we have overcome. some of these we haven't fully solved for, but like, for example, when I started, and this is kind of, as I run down some ideas, it's almost kind of like the blueprint too of how, if you're a new TA leader, or if you're a TA leader where you're not at the table yet or not heavily involved in headcount planning, I think the following answers I'm going to give are kind of like that blueprint of how to learn from our mistakes, I guess you could say.
Great.
But like, for example, when I started in my role, we did not have clearly defined processes, defined owners, or again, TA was not at the table when it comes to the headcount planning. And so to me, that was the first challenge I faced, was even understanding or getting the business to understand what my role is as a TA leader, and then really pushing them to have defined processes. And again, another thing I'm really proud of is I was that voice to finance, to our business ops leaders, to our HR leaders, to have these defined processes. Thankfully, they listened, and we now do have those clearly defined processes. We have those workforce planning pods I talked about. But when I started, we did not have that, and that was a big change for us. And again, the other piece to it is, not only was TA not at the table, but I will freely say, so I've been at ServiceNow for 4.5 years. I'm going to go a little bit of a tangent, but I'll come right back to the answer. When I started at ServiceNow, we were about 7,500 employees. We're now, I think, north of 23,000, and we're continuing to grow. It's been an incredible journey for me, and something we haven't specifically talked about, but I do love to bring into the conversation. I'm somebody who, as you two know, I'm legally blind, and I have some sight, but it's very limited. And I have faced so many challenges throughout my career, and but if you ever look at my LinkedIn page, you're going to see me brag about ServiceNow. I found like the job I need to be at. I love being at ServiceNow. I love being part of this rocket ship. I also mentioned like the disability part, because I've never been at a place where I can be as authentic Jeff as I can be, as I am at ServiceNow, and have that opportunity to flourish. I say all of that. When I started at ServiceNow, headcount management was not in our DNA. We were very tactical, active. TA was just there to make hires. Most of the hires came through referrals, through the business, and then we processed hires. It was a journey. And again, I've been here for 4.5 years, and I can say it's the last probably 12 to 18 months where we're really finally at the table when it comes to being TA involved in how we look at headcount management. And so it's been that long journey because it just wasn't in our DNA as a company. And so as a TA leader, if you're looking to really, how do you overcome and get yourself at the table? It's really having these conversations with the finance, HR, business ops. Honestly, I would say you start with the chief of staff or business ops, because they have so much influence of what happens across the org. And through those conversations, through the energy, showing the benefits of why this would help each of them in different ways, that to me is how you overcome these challenges and get to a successful, cohesive, robust headcount management process, strategy, system.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, Jeff, you touched on early the notion that it's critical to have your people ops and your finance folks there, because there's all those hiddens that lie in that plan, such as, well, what about attrition? And what about, the geography issue that you faced, like in Costa Rica? So I think, this, for me, you've hit on this issue of scalability as well. You guys were small when you got there at 7,500 people. That's right at that growing pain stage. And these methods, some folks will say, if you make it too tight of a process, it means you're closed-minded and you don't have any art in the process. But I love hearing the fact that these methods enable you to be scalable, which you've had to do. And I think that's a key notion here, of that you can avoid those things, but you will probably not pass a certain rate or scale
Correct.
if you do.
One other thing, I think I'll add real quick to this. where I will tell you it's a challenge and we're still not 100% there yet. And just hit me, Chris, when you said the scale part is looking at your data. And what I mean by that is, for example, when it comes to headcount, there's so many different ways to measure headcount. It's headcount by who funds the resource versus who the resource reports into. My other huge advice is as you start to build out a robust system, one, really get clarity on what is the single source of truth to all things headcount data, because finance will have records, people insights or HR team may have a different record. And while they both might be actually right, because you can measure headcount differently, it's what matters the most to the leader of that org is what becomes that truth when it comes to data. And they do vary. And so it's really having a clear understanding and getting everybody at the table, finance, whoever does your reporting, etc., and making sure we're clear who owns headcount reporting, what is that single source of truth. That's something that took us a while and we're still trying to overall figure out, but we're getting to a solution. And I also mention that because for me as a TA leader, the other, I guess it was an early challenge, but now it's what I would call a success, is never shy away from telling the TA story. And what I mean by that is, as you're looking at current quarter and future quarter, because at the end of the day, business leaders are going to care about how are we doing right now and how we're going to do next quarter of hitting headcount or hiring targets. It's tell that story proactively, whether it's weekly, every other week, monthly, whatever works for that leader. And if you're not hitting the headcount target, don't hide that. Be very open that you're missing. Explain why and what you're going to do about it. Or if you need the business to help solve for it, what you need from them. That's probably one of the biggest things I've learned, where, early on we may not be looking good to hit plan. And so it's like, I'm afraid to tell that story. Biggest way I earned trust within this org was actually telling them in advance, we're not going to hit target, but here's what I'm going to do to fix it. So I forgot that. I just want to throw that out there as well.
No, I think that's such a critical piece of it, is that, be honest and be kind of brutal on yourselves at the table while you're there, right? So good transition. Looking forward, what are you excited about? Whether ServiceNow or whether you're in the craft, kind of small and big picture.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, I feel blessed and I'm just grateful to be where I'm at ServiceNow. It's been a rocket ship. We're continuing to grow. What's really exciting to me for ServiceNow is we are really focused on quote unquote being the AI first organization. Like, we have really put AI into all things we do, both internally within our own products, but also externally within the products we sell to our customers. What's really neat to me, and I was talking to our people insights team about this, we are really looking at AI could have such an impact when it comes to headcount management. Think of the ways AI can do scenario planning that would normally take us, hours to figure out, like if hiring increases by 20% in this region, what would that take for TA capacity, or other examples like that. AI, through the use of AI, I bet you within the next year, whether it's ServiceNow or elsewhere, we'll have, like at a snap of our finger, a way to do these scenarios and role playing to really even make our decision making even more defined and robust. To me, that's just exciting. I just think overall, how AI is playing such a big impact on the future of software and tech companies. It's going to be fun to watch the next few years. Of course, there's some constraints within AI, and to see how this all evolves over the next few years is exciting to me.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I'm excited to see the continual adoption of AI and the hopeful positive impact with, incremental efficiencies across TA. And again, hopefully that can be done with safety, but it's definitely a loved topic right now, AI, Gen AI, and the boom we've witnessed. Curveball question for you, Jeff. So why is Chris Rosano so loved by everyone?
Chris Rosano, why is he loved by everyone? I think it's the rugged good looks and just The wholesome nature.
And a word comes to mind for me about why I'm sure you're loved in your organization too, Jeff, is the authenticity. I can say
Yes.
Chris is authentic. This conversation's been authentic. I've learned a lot from you, and I'm appreciating that you were vulnerable here about things like disabilities, from vision to also just the difficulties that you've seen at ServiceNow and as a TA leader, the constant fluctuations from the economy. It can be a tough role. It
Hmm.
can be sometimes thankless, but I am here to say I am in love with the TA and the tech industry, and I'm cheering us on for the long term. So I want to say a warm message of gratitude. Thanks for joining us on the Lean In podcast, Jeff. Any parting words you want to say to our audience before we sign off today?
Yeah, it's actually what you just said. I was just talking to another peer of mine last week, and her and I were having a very similar conversation. Like, our roles as TA leaders, we are on the front line, and it's very stressful. But I honestly could not think of anything else I'd rather do in my career. And one of the cliches I'll tell people, and people on my team have heard me say this many times, I feel like this oddball where I actually went to grad school and took a class in staffing and left college wanting to be a recruiter. I know very few people go to college and start as a recruiter, but when I took a class in way back in 1990 something, it was a class on staffing. And when I found out that I can get paid to be nosy and ask people questions, I have never had a paying job in my life that was not talent acquisition. And I
Wow.
say that because I felt so grateful. Like, this has truly been, I love what we do, as you said. And I've been in this since the 90s, and just seeing the advancements of technology and how technology influences what we do in TA. Our job is such a critical strategic part of the business. I see more and more of the business embracing us. We're not just a tactical order, filler. We are a strategic part of the business. That's all exciting to me. I love what we do. I could have these conversations all day. And it's just exciting to me of, the influence that we can make and the impact we make on the business.
Well said. Well said.
You're,
Well, I'm cheering you on and cheering ServiceNow on. So again, thanks everyone for tuning in to this episode on capacity planning. And thank you, Jeff Gray, for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
and
Likewise.
are